Deputy Speaker, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to raise this important and alarming issue this evening, and I'm grateful to colleagues who have stayed late to be present during this debate. Spac Nation are an organisation that's been in the news recently, and I'd like to start off by expressing my gratitude to Nadine White and Emma Yule at HuffPost, who have carried out some extraordinary investigative journalism to bring them to light, and also to Greg Mackenzie and the excellent BBC Panorama team for their work, as well as many others working in the media and in the press. When I first became aware of Spac Nation, I thought, as many have done, that it was just another church. I started to think differently when one of their leaders stood as the Conservative candidate in a Croydon Council by-election. Now, there's nothing wrong in a church leader standing for election, of course. What was odd was to find hundreds of young members of this so-called church shouting abuse at other parties' canvassers, shouting obscenities at the council leader, and intimidating voters on their own doorsteps, including by video recording them. When I tweeted my concerns about this unchurch-like behaviour, I was inundated with emails and phone calls from young people and their parents making alarming allegations about Spac Nation. I took a full 2 days to phone them all back, but from that I was able to piece together what was really going on inside this organisation. I am convinced that Spac Nation is a cult. They advertise events targeted mainly at young black people in poorer parts of London. They offer free food or free bowling sessions to attract young people to come along. The young leaders vet the young people who turn up, and they then target those who appear to be the most susceptible. They befriend these particular young people, and they invite them to further functions and events, including dinners. One of the organisation's leaders will start phoning them, sometimes several times a day. They're then given lifts by that individual to meeting. Then what appears to be brainwashing starts. They're told that if their life is unsuccessful, if their family is poor, that's because they're not giving enough money to God. They call it seed. If you give seed to God, as much as you can lay your hands on, you will become rich. This is the message they try to pump into these young people's heads. The organisation's leaders display extraordinary wealth. They drive cars worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. They wear Rolex watches and expensive designer suits, and they live in multi-million-pound properties. All of this way beyond the experience of the young people that they are targeting. They tell these vulnerable young people that they became rich by giving seed to God, and tell them they can have the same, but first they have to give, and by any means possible. Some young people are encouraged to break their links with their families and move into properties rented by the organisation's leaders. They call them trap houses, the term used for drug dens in the United States. A woman leader of this organisation running one of these trap houses, where vulnerable young girls were placed, has 27 convictions for serious fraud. No vulnerable child should be allowed anywhere near her. Once in these houses, the control and coercion becomes far more insidious. One young victim told me they had prayer sessions that she described as brainwashing for up to 8 hours a day. But the emphasis wasn't on God or spirituality, it was on wealth and money and the need to give seed to God in order to get rich. Once the organisation has control of a young person's mind, they pressure them into making fraudulent personal loan applications so they can hand the money to the organisation's leaders. They're pressured into setting up fake businesses so they can apply fraudulently for business loans. The so-called pastors show the young recruits how to fill in the application forms with false information. In some cases, they fill the forms in for the young person simply to sign. In at least one case, an application was made in a young person's name without their knowledge or awareness that it had been done.
Would the honourable member give way? On Spac Nation and the financial implications of some of their dealings, my honourable friend will be aware of the case of the late Mrs Osinlaru, who seems to have obtained a loan for £150,000, a secured loan on her house. She tragically passed away leaving her 2 young adult daughters and 13-year-old son in the house, unaware that there was this control of the house, which was later repossessed and a bailiff's warrant secured, only stopped because of the presence of the young 13-year-old son. That family risked losing their home and becoming homeless for a loan they didn't know about, and their mum has passed away. I have written to the church. They have admitted that they were involved in securing or helping secure that loan. Does that give my friend further concern?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for raising yet another alarming case of what appears to be a form of fraud and deception perpetrated upon a family who had just lost their mother and seems to have been deliberately intended to disinherit her children. So I'm grateful for her for raising that case too. And that there are many ways in which they appear to be perpetrating fraud in order to enrich themselves, the leaders of this organisation. I've spoken to young people who absolutely sickeningly were taken to private clinics to sell their blood with a so-called pastor pretending to be their parent to sign consent. Young people I've spoken to were coached to commit benefit fraud. I've met students and spoken to their parents who were coerced into handing over their entire student loans before then being taken to banks to raise further money through personal loans. So they lost their ability to continue in education and ended up in serious financial debt. Tragically, where criminal exploitation is taking place, there is often also sexual exploitation. One young woman told me she was just 16 when she moved into a trap house, and in her words, everyone was having sex with everyone else. It was disgusting. I asked her to clarify whether she meant older pastors having sex with younger girls, and she said yes. When this young woman complained to her pastor, she was taken to the organisation's leader, who told her that if she complained to the police, it would rebound on her because he was powerful and had friends in high places. He made that claim look real to these vulnerable young people by inviting politicians and senior police officers to his church services. He even met the Prime Minister in 10 Downing Street. All of them, I believe, thought they were engaging with a church that was helping vulnerable young people. But in reality, they were being used to intimidate young victims to stop them from speaking out. This is not an organisation getting young people out of crime, as it claims. It's an organisation criminalising young people for its own ends. Spac Nation is operating right across London and has already expanded into other cities, including Birmingham and Leicester.
Can I just thank my honourable friend for actually securing this debate and for actually raising what is clearly quite an important issue? But does he agree with me? It's criminal activity and it's preying on the most vulnerable. And it's essential that the government really does need to intervene and take action on this.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for making that important point. I'm looking forward to hearing what ministers have to say afterwards about how we can work constructively and collectively together to tackle many of the problems and horrors that we're hearing associated with this organisation. As I was saying, the organisation started in London. It seems to have spread right across the city, but it's expanding into other cities, including Birmingham and Leicester. They have no fixed location. They don't have a home church, which makes it much harder for the authorities to track them. There's not a home police command unit which is keeping track of what they're doing. There's not a local safeguarding board which is keeping track of the risks to young people. They hold their services in vast venues in many different boroughs and now different cities across the country. I've reported every single allegation that was made to me, to the police and to the safeguarding authorities. But I am deeply worried that more has not been done to stop this organisation from exploiting vulnerable young people. Spac Nation itself claims to have up to 1,000 young people involved right now. Every one of those young people is potentially at risk. They appear to have up to 15 trap houses scattered across London. Every young person inside those properties is potentially at very serious risk. A teacher in North London told me that Spac Nation had been recruiting schoolgirls outside the school gates. A youth worker in Croydon told me they had been recruiting outside the youth centre. They are targeting young people so they can exploit them, and it is imperative that they are stopped. I have some questions that I'd like the Minister to answer this evening, if that's possible. Allegations about this organisation have been circulating widely in the black community and on social media for up to 4 years. So why has police intelligence failed to pick anything up? I was able to find out most of this information over a couple of days, speaking to people and then Googling on social media. If I can do that without the resources of the police, why has police intelligence failed to recognise what is happening to potentially thousands of vulnerable young kids across this city? What action can be taken immediately to stop this organisation recruiting any more vulnerable young people for abuse and exploitation in my constituency and beyond? Given what we have heard, given what victims have told us, we surely cannot allow this organisation to continue targeting other young people for abuse and exploitation when it's possible for us to take steps and action to protect them. What help can be given to young people involved in Spac Nation now, including those living in trap houses who need to get out urgently before they are further criminalised, their family relationships destroyed and their future lives ruined? And why has no help been offered to potentially thousands of young people who have managed to get away from Spac Nation but are left burdened with huge debts, criminalised, many of them homeless, and many of them suffering trauma and mental ill health? We cannot simply leave these young people to suffer the consequences of abuse by an exploitative organisation. There are... Yep.
I have to say that what he has illustrated tonight in the House is worrying to every one of us who has heard it, and I think it's hard not to be moved and feel concerned about it. The magnitude and the massiveness of what he has outlined, the Honourable Gentleman has outlined, would indicate to me that it wouldn't just be an ordinary police investigation. It probably needs a specialised unit set aside with the resources and manpower and womanpower to try and make it, to have the investigation concluded and to put an end to what's going on. Exploitation of young people is abysmal and is despicable and needs to be addressed.
I'm very grateful, as always, to the Honourable Gentleman for his intervention, and I agree with every word that he's said. Now, what concerns me further is that there are worrying echoes of the Rotherham child abuse scandal in what's happening here. In that case, vulnerable young girls' allegations of serious abuse were dismissed because they came from poor or difficult backgrounds. And it's the same with Spac Nation. I can't help wondering, as one desperate mum told me, if this was happening to white middle-class children, would it have been ignored for so many years? Would it have been allowed to go on in the way that it has done? We need to address that question because it is a real feeling and concern in the community. In my opinion, Spac Nation is a criminal enterprise masquerading as a church because that gives them access to vulnerable young people and cover for exploiting them. To every young person who's afraid or at risk from Spac Nation's activities tonight, I'd like to say this. This organisation might seem powerful, but we are stronger and we are on your side. We will not stop collectively until every young person is safe. We will not stop until the wrongdoers inside Spac Nation have been brought to justice. We will not stop until this dangerous, manipulative organisation can do no more harm.
Minister.
Thank you. I would like to begin by thanking the Honourable Member for Croydon North for calling this debate and raising these very serious concerns. I would also like to thank his constituents and all those who've had the courage to speak up and bring this situation to his attention and to our attention, and to thank other members who've stayed here tonight to intervene and contribute to this debate. Now, I'm answering this debate as a Minister for Arts, Heritage and Tourism on behalf of the Minister for Civil Society, Baroness Barron, who sits in the House of Lords. And the allegations concern a charity, and charity policy sits within our department. But I'm also very grateful to have the Minister for Safeguarding and Vulnerability from the Home Office on the front bench with me, and the Minister for London and another member for Croydon. I've listened very carefully to the Honourable Member. I've also read a great deal of the coverage in the media, and I also watched the Panorama documentary, and I found the accusations deeply concerning. These are very serious allegations, and they clearly must be properly and urgently investigated. On the 5th of December last year, the Charity Commission opened a statutory inquiry into Spac Nation, and that inquiry is looking into its finances, governance and safeguarding, and its overall compliance with charity law. That was, however, not the Charity Commission's first engagement with Spac Nation. They launched a regulatory compliance case looking into Spac Nation in April 2018 and then issued an action plan to its trustees in June 2019. And the Charity Commission was not satisfied with Spac Nation's response to the action plan, and that's why, together with the further allegations and concerns that have been raised in the media and by the Honourable Member, they launched their statutory inquiry in December. The Commission has also issued an order under Section 84 of the Charities Act 2011 requiring the charity to bank money that it holds as cash. I hope the Honourable Member will understand that whilst the Commission is carrying out its statutory inquiry, I cannot comment on the specific allegations in this case. A report will be published by the Commission once the investigation is complete. Now, whilst the Charity Commission cannot itself investigate criminal offences, it does have the power to refer charities to the police, and in parallel I understand that the Met Police is already reviewing these allegations into fraud and other offences that relate to Spac Nation that the Honourable Member has raised, and I believe has raised directly with them. In my opinion, one of the most upsetting aspects of these allegations is the alleged exploitation of truly vulnerable young people, and the suggestion that the very people who most need help and support may be being taken advantage of. That's particularly worrying. I'd say that is a known risk, hence a huge amount of work that has been and is being done across government to improve safeguarding practices to make our society safer for young people. Safeguarding and... Yeah, I'm very happy to give way.
I thank you for giving way. If you agree that this is a really important issue in terms of the safeguarding of young people, the reality is that this is still happening now to a number of young people, not just in London, but as my honourable friend mentioned, across other cities. Is there not something that the government can do in this now time to actually investigate some of these really serious allegations where a number of young people continue to be exploited?
So, as I think I'm trying to make clear, that these are allegations which are being investigated by the Charity Commission and being reviewed by the police, and it's not something that government can intervene in at this point. But I think this debate is certainly raising this very much up the agenda, and for sure is making sure that there is a great deal of awareness of the situation. And I will do my best to address the questions as I proceed. I just want to continue to talk a bit more about the really important role of safeguarding in charities. I think it is really, really important because it's exactly that should prevent exploitation of young people, or when exploitation happens, make sure that there is a rapid and effective response. But I want to make it clear how seriously the government takes this, that since 2018 we've invested over £1 million in the domestic charities safeguarding programme. We've been working with charities, other partners, including the National Crime Agency, to raise awareness of safeguarding, to ensure that charities, whatever their size, large and small, know the responsibilities, know how to handle concerns quickly and can easily access the advice. The Charity Commission has also launched a whistleblowing helpline to help people report safeguarding concerns. And I would encourage anybody, and obviously members here can also refer people to do this, if they've witnessed or experienced or concerned about wrongdoings in charities, to use that as a means of reporting it. I think allegations such as those raised by the Honourable Member do reinforce the importance of this really vital work on strengthening safeguarding, and there will be further announcements on that shortly. Protecting people from harm must always take precedence over protecting a charity's brand or status, and charities must be clear that they will listen to safeguarding concerns, and those concerns must be treated promptly and seriously acted on. The majority of charities take their safeguarding responsibilities extremely seriously. And so I think it's right to make sure that we recognise that, and then the action is taken by the Charity Commission and is necessary local safeguarding authorities and the police. However, many of the Honourable Members' concerns do relate to police matters, who, as I've said, I understand are reviewing the evidence that they have received. Now, can I suggest, if he hasn't done so already, that he raises these concerns about policing with both the Mayor of London and with the Commissioner of the Met Police. Now, coming to the government, the Home Office is working extremely hard transforming its approach to dealing with crimes against vulnerable young people. They have invested significantly in a programme of reform to help the police respond to changing crimes, including child sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse has been prioritised as a national threat. The Home Office are empowering police forces to develop their specialist skills and expertise, increasing the capabilities of the police to tackle this terrible crime. I will indeed.
Can I thank the Minister for giving me way, but I'm just going to ask a question, and forgive me if I'm the one being ignorant on this particular point, but you've asked my honourable friend to, if he hasn't already done so, to raise this with the Mayor of London and with the Police Commissioner. The Home Office is the government's responsibility, and this sounds to me like a Home Office issue that the government need to be looking into. So can she just clarify whether or not this is not an issue that the Home Office should be addressing?
So I think the important point is this is a police matter, and that's why the Mayor of London, as the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, is the appropriate person to raise concerns with. However, there is a bigger picture point, which is why I'm talking about what the Home Office is doing about acting to prevent and respond to crime for young people, and particularly on sexual abuse. And I just want to come to something which is very relevant to the specific topic. So in 2015, the Home Office launched the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, and in May last year, that inquiry announced its final investigation strand into child protection in religious organisations and settings. So that strand of the inquiry is now examining the nature and adequacy of child protection policies, practices and procedures, and will consider whether safeguarding these kind of settings needs to be strengthened further. Also looking across government on safeguarding, the Department for Education in July 2018 updated their statutory guidance on interagency working to safeguard and promote the welfare for children, and is funding a £2 million tackling child exploitation support programme to help deliver more effective response to child sexual and criminal exploitation, gang and drug involvement. Yes, indeed.
To her for giving way. But can I ask, how much longer does she think this organisation should be allowed to access vulnerable young people and exploit them?
I'm doing my best to make clear how very seriously I take these allegations, and I know that the other ministers with me on the bench take these allegations very seriously, but they are being investigated, and therefore the honourable member puts me in a very difficult position to ask me to say things which would be inappropriate for me to say at this dispatch box. I will do my one thing. I will do my best, also recognising that I may not be able to answer all his questions right here and now, to follow up and write to him with the best possible answers that I can give. What I can also say is my honourable friend, the Minister here from the Home Office, has suggested that she might be able to meet with him and the other Croydon MPs to discuss the wider issues which are brought up by the concerns that he is raising. Does he? Okay.
I didn't mean to put you in a difficult position or to be disingenuous in any way. I'm just concerned that given the severity and the number, the volume of the allegations and the type of allegations that we're hearing, is there nothing further that can be done, perhaps by the government working with the police and crime commissioners, wherever those that may be necessary, or with the police forces where it may be necessary, to prevent this organisation, even if temporarily, from being able to stand outside school gates, stand outside youth centres and target young people? I'd be happy to work collaboratively with her and colleagues on seeking an answer to that, because I understand I haven't given warning of that question this evening, but if there was some way we could look at working together to prevent any more young lives being destroyed, even while investigations are going on, I would be immensely grateful.
Yeah. Would the Minister give way on that point?
Can I just respond to that point? I'm sorry, I cannot give a different answer standing here, but what I do also want to say is I think none of us would want to say anything this evening that might perhaps prevent an effective investigation taking place, or prejudice the outcome of that in any way that might be unhelpful. Given how serious these allegations are, let's make sure that they can be effectively investigated and pursued.
Thanks to the Minister for giving way. He's been very generous. I just wondered, the Charity Commission can often move very slowly. And given the seriousness of the allegations, would there not be a possibility of suspending charitable status while the investigations are going ahead? Considering other charities from memory who deal with young people, I am aware that this has happened in the past.
That's fantastic. Very good, very good.
I'm very happy to write back to her with a full response to that question. But let me reiterate that I know that the Charity Commission is, as I said before, investigating, and also because they don't look into criminal activity, but the police are reviewing these allegations. So those two things are very much happening. One thing before we finish, I want to just put the record straight on, is that I do understand that the pastor the Honourable Member referred to indeed went to number 10 Downing Street, but I have been told he did not meet the Prime Minister, and I think that was appropriate. My understanding is that he attended a round table along with 25 other church leaders to discuss youth violence, and it was in that context that he was in number 10 Downing Street. Just before I conclude, I do want to make the point, I think it's an important one to make, is to say how mindful I am, against the context of this debate, what an important role that religion, faith and worship play in our society, and what a significant and important contribution that many, many religious charities make to our communities, that they often the first in and last out of marginal communities, providing invaluable help and support for those most in need, including many black majority churches up and down this country who support their local communities, contributing positively to wider society. And I think that's a very important point to put on the record. But say in conclusion, I'm very happy to say I will write back to the Honourable Member. He has the offer of a meeting with the Home Office Minister, discuss these wider issues, as I said, in principle. But can I thank him for calling this debate, highlighting these very serious allegations. His concerns have been fully heard by me, by the other ministers here, and I should think actually many thousands via the media coverage that this has received. The crucial next step is for the Charity Commission and the police to investigate the allegations and to take appropriate action.